Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a couple of Bible verses. I think it's really important. And we're also going to talk about the cleansing of sin. So for people who have trained in Reiki especially and other energy healing, you begin to read the Bible and see things that, how do I explain this, that the normal person wouldn't see. It's kind of like, okay, let me just randomly grab a subject. So let's say you're an architecture, right? You're an architect. And you see things that, because other people are not trained in it, they can't see it because they don't even know anything about that, okay? They never studied, I don't know, trigonometry or what's the other one I'm looking for, damn it? Geometry. And other things. They don't understand how things fit together, work together, etc. And so because of that, an architect with his experience can learn something. Like, I bet if he reads the Bible, he'll be able to see things that people, even myself, wouldn't notice because of what he's trained in to see. Okay, so let's take Reiki. How do I say this? Okay, so when I was watching The Chosen One, and it was when Jesus was healing that woman's eyes, he prayed and he looked up and he kind of opened his hand like he was receiving light, and then he put it on her eyes, and then boom, her eyes opened. And as he was doing that, okay, watch this. Okay, so a memory came back to me. So I had done some basic training in energy healing, but I had meditated for many years, and every day for hours and hours, on the weekends for a lot longer than just a couple of hours, right? And so I went through a spiritual awakening when I was 28 years old. Only I would say 5, 6, 7 years later, maybe 10 years later, somewhere along the line, someone goes, well, how old were you when you went through your awakening? I said, it was literally just like a week or 10 days after my 28th birthday, something like that. I don't remember exactly what day it was. Hey, that's interesting because that's generally when it's going to happen. Every 4 7, so 7 times 4 is like a huge shift. I think they call it your Saturn return. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, and generally that's when it happened. He goes, that's when it happened to Jesus. Now, when I went through my spiritual awakening, this was beyond any energy healing or anything that I could talk about, or the training or anything. There was just this massive shift where I opened wide open. Now, I was with my girlfriend at the time. We were with her friend, someone she worked with. We were walking to the mall. And as we were walking, she was really stressed about something that was going on with her body, something physical. I don't want to get into it right now because it's kind of an in-depth story. And I know you guys like stories, but here, let me pause this and think about it. All right, I'll tell you this part. Okay, or I'll explain it this way. So, when I saw that in The Chosen, when Jesus reached up and did that, and then he grabbed something and he put it into her eyes, the same experience, or a very similar experience, was we were walking, and this girl she'd been stressed for quite a while because of what was going on. And something, how to explain this? So at this point, I was really good at opening wide open. In fact, I generally just walked around for 6 months after my awakening, just wide open. And I mean, just conscious of everything, okay? And essentially, it's call it being highly intuitive to the maximum. And something just told me, like, oh, you can take care of her right now. And I looked up, and that's when I saw that in The Chosen, when Jesus looked up, and I was like, that's exactly what happened. Like, something just came to me, and then I healed her of her issue. It was instantaneous. Now, when we talk about sin, now I read something today. It was on Facebook, and I thought it gave me this image of sin being this dark dirt, call it like electric or dirty energy around your body, around your energy field. Now, in Pranic healing, what we do is we do the sweeping motion, okay? And we sweep away the dirty energy all the way around your body. Now, there's a lot more that we do than that, but we generally sweep the energy away. So a lot of you, how do I explain this? Sin, okay, so the left brain people came along and they read the teachings of the Bible and said, oh, oh, it's about rules, because the left brain processes everything through rules, structure, and organization. That's literally how the left brain processes information. So you know how in the last few videos, probably the last 5-6 videos, I've been talking about how we have these beliefs, or we have these misunderstandings, and they become filters. Well, each brain, the left brain and the right brain, they, in a way, they act like filters because they process information a certain way. So if you read the teachings of Jesus from the right brain, you're going to see one thing, and if you read it from the left brain, you're going to see rules, structure, and organization. You're literally going to turn everything into rules, structure, and organization. It is the either or, right or wrong brain. It's the brain you use for the scientific method. So when you read the Bible or you watch The Chosen and you see these, well, I forget what they're called, Pharisees, Sadducees, the priests, or whatever they were of the time, I forget the different words for it, or rabbis, one of them, is they would argue to death with Jesus because they saw everything in either or mentality, which I've talked about. It's like, again, it's a rectangle in front of you. You draw a line down the middle, and there's two boxes. There's box A on the left and box B on the right. So if you're in box A and you're right, that must mean that they're wrong, because if they're right, that means that you're wrong. This is a very narcissistic way of going through life. So you believe that everything that you believe has to be right, and if you're right, that means they have to be wrong, and therefore they must be punished and forced to see it your way. And thus we have religion. We have this right or wrong. Everyone's arguing with everyone. Everyone says they're right, and the other people in the church down the street is wrong, or the Mormon church is wrong, or the Catholic church is wrong. I'm saying they're all wrong, equally together. The whole idea of what the teachings of Jesus are a bunch of rules is just completely wrong. There are things, what I'm going to talk about today, in the Old Testament that were health, not rules, but I guess you could say they were rules, but they're saying, hey, don't do this because it'll make you very sick and you could die from it. And the church said, oh, if you do that, you're breaking this rule, because they saw it as a rule, versus a health tip, or versus advice, and it said, if you break this rule, you're going to hell. So I started seeing these things that just didn't make any sense. For example, the two things I'm talking about that they said was a sin is if you eat pork, you're making a sin because eating pork is a sin. Now, to most Christians and religious people, they say, oh, well, if you have a sin, that means you're going to go to hell. And the other one was shellfish. Now, we now know that the only reason why that they, and the thing is, the word sin, it should have never been applied to this, because it's like going to a nutritionist or a personal trainer who's giving you advice like, hey, don't eat this food because it's going to make you gain weight, or it's going to make you tired or lethargic, but instead eat this over here. It'll give you more energy, raise your metabolism, etc. Now, that doesn't mean that if you don't do what he says, you're going to go to hell because you broke a sin or you broke a rule. Now you're a sinner. Now, here's the deal. I bet each and every one of you on this channel, unless you've been a vegetarian your entire life, I bet each and every one of you has actually eaten pork, bacon, shellfish, seafood, etc., etc. Again, the reason why we couldn't eat shellfish was because it would poison us, and we didn't know how to clean it out or cook it properly to kill it off and clean it out correctly. So now that we know that, well, we can do it now. So was it really a sin? Are you really going to go to hell? So one thing that I learned was language and linguistics, and I pay attention. It's not even that I work hard, I just see it. It's because of the way I was trained. And linguistics is about communication and words and languaging. And so I began to notice, well, Jesus said, look within. I began to notice that Jesus' eyes were, his pupils were dilated large, which means he's using the right brain, the internal brain. Oh, Jesus says to look within. Oh, okay. And by the way, if I haven't broken this down, when I teach the internal awareness course, that's what I'm teaching you how to do. So when I'm teaching you how to be internal through the internal course, internal communication, internal, what's the word I'm looking for, emotionally fulfilling, and how to connect with yourself and emotionally ground yourself, this is what Jesus was teaching people. This teaches you how to become internal, or another way of saying this, open you up to the right brain, which is the internal brain. This is what Jesus meant when he said, look within. Now you're thinking, well, how do you know that? Because I had been teaching this for 10 years at this point. Not today, but this was like way back. I think I was like 29, 30 years old or 31. And it crossed my mind. I was reading the Bible and Jesus said, look within. I go, wait a minute. I've actually read that before. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I've been teaching this stuff to people for years. Maybe not 10 years at that point, but maybe 7 or 8 years. There's another part in the New Testament where he says, he shall be married one unto she. And, how does it say? Yeah, he shall be married one unto she, and they shall be one. Something like that. And when I read that, I was like, wait a minute, that's talking about the left and the right brain. That the word atonement literally means at one. Now this is going to kind of come full circle because there's something else in here that's coming up. But when your left brain and the right brain are at one, and meaning they're in sync, they have rapport with each other, they're on the same wavelength, communication transfers very easily. People that have different wavelengths between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, they're confused. They say one thing, but then later say the complete opposite, and they don't even realize they're doing it because they're not at one. They're not in sync. So the goal is atonement. Those two words, at one, which means atonement. That's the goal. So, here's the two phrases, internal awareness and emotionally grounding. So the internal awareness and emotionally grounding courses and teachings that I teach, it is literally showing you how to become at one. It teaches you how to go internal more and more and more, and that's why Jesus said, look within, because it helps you and shows you the way to become at one. Instead of a bunch of different parts of you flying all over the place, in conflict with each other, having completely different beliefs and values and personalities and all kinds of stuff. And that's the problem that's going on with people. They are not at one with themselves anymore. Now they have a bunch of different parts flying all over the place. Now I'm going to go ahead and read this for you right here. Matthew 23 verse 8 through 10. But you, do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Christ, and you are all brethren. Do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your Father, he who is in heaven. And do not be called teachers, for one is your teacher, the Christ. This is clearly talking about atonement, to be at one. And it's also stating that God is at one. God is your Father. God is your teacher. God is your rabbi. So, for one is your teacher. Okay, one is, whatever it says in here. So, when I was with that girl and my girlfriend going to the mall, I was at oneness in that moment. In fact, for 6 months, I was at oneness the whole way through. It is a really incredible thing that I went through. Generally, if I meditate for a few hours, I can be at one for a couple hours afterwards, okay? For that period of time, it was incredible. And that's like, I looked up and I just received the knowing of what to do. So you yourself have to be in this state or space of oneness to receive information from the one who is God in heaven. Now let's talk about parts integration. It's an actual technique I learned in NLP where you integrate parts to become one. In energy healing, we call them charges because we're working on the energy that is within the parts, okay? So when you have energy charges, you want them to heal and to become at one with you. At one point in time, you were one whole complete ball of energy. There wasn't two of you, there wasn't parts flying around, it was just oneness, okay? But what happened is, somewhere along the line, you started breaking off little bits of your energy and pushing them out. And they became their own persona, meaning they had their own rules, their own values, and their own beliefs. Generally, it was less rules and less values and less beliefs because they had a very specific job that you didn't want to face. So at one point in time, something happened. You got scared. You got stressed. Something happened that basically shook you. Okay, we'll use the word scared for now because it could be guilty, it could be shame, it could be hurt. Okay, it could be anything. So this scared you or upset you so bad, the core you, the wholeness of who you were, suddenly was like, I don't want to deal with this. So you took a little tiny molecule, a little bubble of your energy, say drop of water out of your energy field, drop of energy water we'll call it, and you pushed it outside the bubble and said, you deal with it, I'm done, I can't handle this. So now we just created a separate part. It goes outside of you, creates its own rules and values and beliefs, and it has its own strategy on how to deal with this very specific type of situation. This is sin, because now this part of you is cut off from the core you, which means it is cut off from God. Now when I say sin, the word itself literally means to cut off from or to close off from, and that's what the core you did. You closed off from a part of you. So it doesn't mean sin in the sense that you're going to go to hell, but it will cause your life to be chaotic and can cause it to be like a hell. So anytime you cut off from yourself, you cut off from God. You want to reconnect with yourself, so now the whole you can open up and connect with God. And that's what parts integration and healing your charges is all about, so you can integrate and become more and more at one. So generally when this happens is when we're really young, okay? That's when you get almost all of your parts. One good example, and it's not the first time it happened, it probably happened at birth, it probably happened within the first 72 hours of being born. Somebody laughed too loud or somebody screamed, and oh my God, scaring the crap out of the baby. So generally what happens is, a good one, because it's a universal experience for most people in the Western world, is kindergarten. Okay, and I know I've shared this in the past. So what happens is, you know, you go to this new school for the first time, and you're around all these kids, and you're waiting there about 7:45 in the morning, waiting for class to start at 8 a.m. and there's the teacher there, and maybe a principal, and maybe some other school official, and then you're with your mom and your dad, or maybe your brothers and sisters and stuff, and you're just hanging out, and oh my God, there's Timmy from down the block, and there's Sarah from around the corner. Oh, I didn't know you guys were going to school here, and you know, how you doing? You're all happy and stuff, and everything's great. And then all of a sudden this bell rings, and the teacher goes, okay, everyone go in the classroom. And you're like, wow, cool. You go in the classroom, and your parents go in, and all of a sudden, or maybe at the doorway, your parents go, okay, we got to go to work, you got to go to school. And you're like, wait, what? You're like, okay, we're leaving you here with these total strangers. And you're like, what? And you start to freak out. If you don't remember, you probably cried your eyes out. And so a lot of you, and now I remember, because when I went, I was in my dad's Blazer. We had a big truck, had this really relaxing country music going on, or whatever it was at the time. And my mom was in the front seat, and my brothers and sisters were next to me in the back seat, behind my mom and dad. And we had the windows up, so it's a really good, safe, comforting music and environment, and mom and dad and families there. Even our dog was there, and I'm looking out, and I'm like, hey, there's Jimmy, there's so-and-so. And this one kid was always acting like he was tough, and he's crying. And I remember I literally go, oh, look, so-and-so's crying. The reason why, because he liked to bully kids. And I'm not mean like that, but I was like, oh, he's not that tough. And I remember thinking that. This is when I was in kindergarten. So for me, when I get into new experiences, I don't freak out. So let me explain this. So what happened was, all these kids freaked out. Their parents are trying to pull them off of them and push them in the classroom. And this is a really traumatic experience for a little child, leaving their parents for the first time in kindergarten with these strange teachers. So generally what happens when you have trauma like that and you get terrified, the core you says, screw this is too terrifying, I can't handle it. And it takes a little bubble of energy and pushes it outside and says, you deal with it. Now what happens is that's called a part or a charge. All right. So what happens is it begins to go, okay, I have to deal with this situation. It begins to develop its own rules, values, and beliefs. Okay. and a strategy on how to deal with this kind of a situation. And this situation is new situations. So for the rest of your life, anytime you go to a new church, you go to a new home, you meet new people, you go to a new school, you go to a new job, this part is going to rear its ugly head and it's going to panic. And here's the thing, most of you, this part, its strategy was panicking and freaking the F out and hyperventilating like this, right? So this becomes the strategy that it develops. Now guess what? Every time you get into that new situation, this part goes, okay, it's my time to do my job, and it comes out and it starts to panic. So if you keep having issues where something negative comes up and you're like, why does this keep happening? It's because you have a part that was built for it, and it literally is its job, because the core you made it its job. So it's going to continue until you heal it. Until first grade. Now you got to go to another classroom in a different part of the school, or maybe a completely different school, and you show up to school and you're panicking. And a lot of kids, I remember first grade, when their parents left them there, they were crying and they were freaking out. Now here I am going like, what's the big deal? Because my introduction was, I was in the car watching them, the windows were rolled up, I couldn't hear anyone screaming and crying, so I never got caught up in the chaos. So by the time the bell stopped ringing, my dad pulls up and we were watching and stuff, and my mom said something, oh, well, that's just the way, and I don't remember what she said, but she said something, and I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever, all right, see you later, and I just ran in. It was no big deal. So guess what? That's the way that I deal with new situations. I'm very calm. Essentially, I become very curious when I get shoved into new situations. Now, for these kids, or for those of you who might have developed this part, every time you get older, like second grade, third grade, but by the time you're on 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, especially boys, it's like, I can't cry for the first 2 or 3 days of class because it's embarrassing. I mean, I'm supposed to be a big boy now, right? And so, but here's the deal. That part still comes up, but you hide it. The emotions are stuffed down inside, and you're going, okay, I can handle this. But inside, you're freaking out. But then after about a week of school, maybe 2 weeks, okay, it's fine. No big deal. It's a new school. It's high school. I was scared for the first week, but I'm kind of getting along now, and everything's fine. So that little part goes to sleep, and the core you comes out. And then when you go to college, and then when you get a new job. Now, this is what therapy is all about. You don't have just one part from kindergarten. You got a part from when you were born, maybe a couple. You might have someone, your older brother or sister clap their hands right next to your ear when you were 3 days old. It scared the crap out of you. And so my point being, and then when you were 3 years old, somebody humiliated you, or someone smashed your toe, or someone did something. So another part got created, then another one. What happens is, for every part that you split off from a whole, and so these parts become separated. Now there's the opposite of the other part. Okay, so if this part's confident, this part's freaking out. So in parts integration, essentially what we do, there will be a part that will say, oh, I'm afraid of making money, or I'm afraid of success, or I'm afraid of getting a new job, or whatever it is, and this is something that can hold you back. So what happens is you have this conflict. Like the core you's like, oh my God, I would love to go to that college, or I would love to, go move to that big city and take on that new job making $150,000. That's be amazing. But then there's a part of you going, oh God, no, I can't do it. So now you have this tug of war within you. A part of you is running away, and the core you is trying to run towards, but this part's holding you back. And this is what causes you to stress and have conflict. And that's what a parts separation is. It's a conflict. So I've been doing this work with people for I don't know how many years in my 20s, and I'm in church listening to Pastor Rex talking about atone and atonement, and he said it's 2 words, at one, at plus 1 equals atone, and when you have atone, you have atonement, which means you are at 1. And I went, oh, wait a minute, that's the work I've been doing with my clients. So piece by piece, all of these things began to reveal themselves because I was on a parallel path to what Jesus was teaching the entire time. Jesus is the ultimate example of who and what you can become. At the very least, He's a healer, and he's trying to say, and look, a lot of people, it's funny, but a lot of religious people, they for some reason don't want to admit, or not even that, it's almost like they blind themselves to the fact that Jesus was a healer. And he taught his disciples how to heal. And then when they were done training and got good experience, he then said, now go in pairs unto the world and do so unto others, meaning teach others. There's a verse in the Bible, and I forget what it says, but a lot of Christians change it and say, how do they say? It's like they say that Jesus is the only one. It never. Nowhere in the Bible does it say he is the only one. In fact, he says he teaches this to his disciples, how to go in to heal other people, and then go into the world and do so unto others, etc., etc. But a lot of Christians will say, oh no, Jesus is the only one. I go, where does it say that? Like, what? I go, where does it say that? I go, you literally added to the Bible. Alright, here it is. Okay, so I bring this up a lot because the idea is to be up at this end, the bigger picture end. Okay, that's what Jesus was trying to teach, because when you look within, you open up, your pupils dilate, your eyes pull apart, and you open. So when a part comes up, it gets stuck in the tip right here, and all of a sudden your whole world seems like this horrible situation. Because you're stuck, and what happens is this is what causes panic attacks, like this little part is dealing with, and you're freaking out, and you're stuck at the tip of the V, you can't get out. What I do with your system is I open you up so you can go out the other way, and you expand open, and all of a sudden the stress goes away. It's literally equivalent to looking under a microscope and all you can see is this one little black dot, and you're like, oh my god, my whole world is this way. No, it's not. It's just a little part of it. Like, have you ever been stressed about something and then later on you're like, why was I so stressed about that? Because you were looking under the microscope and that it made it appear that that problem was your whole world, and it wasn't. Now, one of the main things I do with people is parts integration. We get these parts to heal, and then the other part comes along and they connect and they become one again. Okay? And then what happens is we bring that back into the core you. So once they are healed, it comes into the core bubble and becomes at one again. There's not two little parts bouncing around within the core you inside. No, it's like dissolves into it and becomes at one. Just like dropping a drop of water into the ocean. It's not like there's little drops all by itself running around. No, it just becomes at one with the ocean. So here's how all of this started, this part stuff. Is God is this whole oneness completion, right? And what happened was, because he was at such oneness, there was no contrast. Without contrast, you don't have an awareness of self, okay? So he started creating little parts, which is you and me. So you at one point were just one ball of energy. Again, just wholeness, just oneness, not a bunch of parts. You were a piece that God pushed out, because now God can now reflect back to himself. It's almost like looking in a mirror, or not even looking in a mirror, but like a person looking back at themselves going, oh, that's what it looked like. Oh, this is what this tastes like. Oh, this is what this feels like. So now you have contrast, and now you can experience life. When everything is at oneness and you're completely healed and there's no negative charge, you literally won't exist on this plane of existence anymore. You have to have some form of contrast, meaning a negative, at least one spark of negative energy to give you contrast. Otherwise, everything is so pure, so positive, it's just pure light. There's no darkness. Nothing gives it contrast. So now there's no color, there's no flavor, there's no sound, and there's no self-awareness. So let's say we healed all of your parts and integrated every single 100% of you back into the core you, and now you're at oneness. At that moment, boop, you'll go back into God. Here's the really interesting thing. So when parts the work I do, you will discover a part and you'll become conscious of it. And then that part is going, wait a minute, I'm not real. See, these parts are like little illusions that you made up. They are physical energy, but they're not. See, they begin to believe after a period of months and even maybe a year or more, they forget that they came from the core you. And they start to think, well, I'm my own person. I have my own rules, my own values. I even have my own strategy on how to deal with this situation. So the way you heal parts is by becoming conscious of them, very consciously aware of, holy shit, a part of me literally does fight against me. I want to do this, and okay, have you ever heard yourself go, well, you know, a part of me, and usually your left hand or right hand will go out, well, a part of me wants to do this, and then the other hand flips upside down or palm up and goes, but another part of me wants that. So here's the deal. If you, how do I say this? Okay, if you know people that do really well when it comes to making money, it's because they don't have any part conflicts with that. I'm going to be really honest with something. When it comes to meeting women, approaching, talking to women, I have no conflict with that. I'll have no stress. I have no anything. It's just not there. So for me, it's just a really easy thing. But I will also admit, when it comes to marketing my business, there's some kind of conflict. I think I know what it is, but I still haven't been able to figure it out to the point of healing it yet. So there are some things I definitely did discover and definitely healed, but clearly there's obviously something else. So if you're stuck in life, clearly there's one part or more conflict going on. Now here's the deal, you don't have to have 0 parts, you don't have to be perfect. In fact, you need some contrast to exist on this plane of existence. I am telling you, if you were to completely integrate and all your energy became positive electrons, poof, it's like you would disappear. Your energy will physically be there, but you won't exist because it's like it's like putting sugar in warm water or salt in warm water, it just dissolves into it. All right, now here's the interesting thing that we learned in NLP. In fact, somebody in class said, you know, hey, can we work on ourselves? And Dr. Tad James goes, well, yeah, to the extent that you can. And they're like, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you were a brain surgeon, can you do brain surgery on yourself? It's going to be kind of hard. He goes, I'm not saying that he can't do it, but it's going to be pretty difficult. He goes, even a dentist, like, do you really think you could drill your own teeth and pull your own teeth? I mean, you can, but it's probably a lot more difficult. So the lot of work I do, I can do a lot of work because there's a lot of techniques that you can work and do on yourself and energy healing, etc. But it does help a lot when you go to other people. So now what I'm leading up to is working with you is a lot easier to find your parts, to heal your parts, than it is for me to work on myself. Here's the deal. Again, you don't have to be perfectly healed to do really well in life. But the key is to not get one of your parts stuck in the tip, and that's when you get stuck in life. That part goes right in there. It doesn't know that it can turn around and open up and expand its energy and be more open and fluid. So essentially that's the key, is to learn how to shift from part to part, or from the core you, or to access the core you, which is really what I teach people when I'm teaching you how to do the internal awareness techniques and the emotionally grounding techniques, okay? Those coaching and those teaching techniques teach you to come from the core you, which is where your power is anyways, and it keeps you open so you can do a lot more. Okay, so this video went longer than I wanted to, so in the next video, it's going to be a much shorter video because there's one more piece I want to add on, and I want that to be its own video. I think it's really going to help you to understand about what sin is and about letting go, and what the word forgive, it literally means as in for and giving. It's like allowing it to go. Alright, that's it for this video. The next video I think is going to be very interesting, okay? Alright, God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. If you like, please click subscribe. Click the like button, go ahead and make a comment, and as usual, you can go ahead and make a donation if you want. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. Alright guys, see you in the next video.